This is June 22nd, 1961. Can you recall your earliest memories of race?
You grab that bat and you do what's right.
I don't think so.
This is in your blood. All right, this is where you belong, boy.
Montgomery's a pretty town.
With a pretty ugly side to it.
Get out of here!
I was in a riot and I walked right through it, unharmed.
What is the point you're trying to make?
Maybe I could go around college campuses talking to students about the Negro cause.
What the hell do you think you're doing?
Son, I'm starting to wonder if you are aware of the poison in the apple that you have bitten into.
You know this movement is about more than just voting rights. We're trying to change the world.
You want to jeopardize your whole life for some grand principle?
Isn't that what they're doing?
Some of these old boys around here, they really mean to do you some harm.
Oh, I bet you ain't happy you came to Montgomery now, boy.
So what's gonna happen next?
Let's start a revolution.
We continue on.
Let's start a revolution now. Won't break and we won't back down.
But we're still breathing.
It's feeling too strong. We've been down for too long. What are you supposed to do when everybody wants you gone?
You gotta draw the line somewhere.
You stop right now.
They're gonna kill him.
This is for the memory. All my people next to me. They could take our lives, but they'll never take a legacy.
There's gonna come a time when something really bad happens, and you're gonna have to decide which side you're on. Not choosing is a choice.
We hold the moral high ground.
Ain't you supposed to be nonviolent now?
I'm having a real big problem with that right now.
Okay, today we're going to be talking with three people who come not so much from different worlds, but from different places in the world and have arrived on a film set together. And there's a story to how that happened, and there's a story to the story. But I'm going to begin the story with a young man named Kuntrell Jackson. Kuntrell, I basically think that you can tell your story better than anybody else. But to give a little context to your story, there's a phrase that we've heard. We just came off a very political year. And, every time there's an election, we hear all the words that various politicians who are running for whatever office have said and how it affects them and then how we interpret it. And it's been largely quoted to Hillary Clinton, the whole concept of a super predator. And what does that mean? It was classifying young people who are they're so bad that they can't be changed. They were sentenced to life in prison, even if they were 13, 14, 15 years old. Now we know the prison system in this country, and we also know the history of this country. So clearly it would be brown and black people disproportionately affected by this. But there's a lot more to this story. Hillary Clinton did not come up with that phrase. That phrase did not originate with her. It was something she may have latched onto at the time, but times change. So I want to talk to, or I want to introduce Kuntrell. Tell me a little bit about your story and how you came to wanting to be an actor, because I know you as an actor. I first saw you on screen as a performer. I didn't even realize completely because I had seen Just Mercy and I had got a chance to talk and interview Brian Stevenson. And I knew that some real people that he had worked with were in the film, but at the time, I didn't quite recognize that it was you in Son of South. So tell me a little bit about your story, how you got to meet Brian Stevenson, and what people really need to know about how your life was affected by this phrase, super predator.
Well, yes, of course, you introduced me. I'm Kuntrell Jackson. I was sentenced to life without parole at the age of 14 for a murder I didn't commit. When you use the word super predator, you know, it affected me tremendously because I was a young black boy that grew up in an environment where everything was bad because we wasn't able to be put in the suburbs. We didn't have the resources that privileged kids my age growing up had. So I was forced to be placed in this environment where it wasn't nothing but a lot of drugs and violence and, you know, seeing your parents fighting all the time, constantly, just drama. And, you know, it led me to dropping out of school because I wasn't able to afford the clothes and shoes that the other kids had. They started laughing and talking about me. So I'm embarrassed now. I don't want to be around them. So I started fighting them because they was talking about me. They was hurting my feelings. And after a while, I left school. I didn't want to be there anymore. And it led me to hanging out in the streets. And when I started hanging with my friends and we formed this little group, we started doing things that, you know, we ain't had no business doing, nothing too violent, but, you know, we was stealing, we was skipping school, just doing things kids shouldn't be doing. And, you know, I ended up walking with my friends one night, and one of my friends decided they wanted to rob this video store. And I kept telling them, no, we don't rob people. That's not what we do. But he was persistent. And another person walking with me was my cousin. So when we got closer to the store, my cousin saw there was no one in the store but the store clerk. So now he wanted to rob the store with my friend. And he telling me, he trying to convince me that it's going to be okay. Ain't nobody in the store but this one person. And I'm like, nah, that ain't what we do. But growing up in my environment, we was always taught to have family back regardless. I didn't tell him no and I didn't tell him yeah. But in the back of my mind, I wasn't going to let nobody walk up on my cousin while they're in there doing something they ain't got no business doing. Make a long story short, they go in the store, they walking around. So in my mind, I'm thinking they gonna chicken out, and they didn't. My homeboy, he pulled a gun on the store clerk, and I opened the door. I stepped 1 foot in the store, and I said, man, I thought y'all was just playing. I honestly believe that my voice scared my friend, and he pulled the trigger because his finger was already on the trigger. So when I opened the door and said, I thought y'all was just playing, boom. You know, and I was just froze. So we ran to my house. I didn't have anything to do with this robbery, with this murder, but I still ended up getting life without parole. But that's because of that theory that we are super predators. You know, they saw me as a young black male that was a threat, that was unchangeable, that was horrible, just a bad person. And at 14 years old, I got sentenced to life without parole in prison. I was sentenced to die as a kid in prison for something I didn't even do. And I
gotta ask you a question here before, because I want to hear the rest of the story, but I have to ask you, it makes me wonder, at any point, you know, as you tell me this story and when we get to Nicole, you know, she heard your story, but did you get a chance at all? I mean, there was a story, a narrative going on about you, who you were, what you were, before you ever entered that court. Did you ever get a chance to tell your story? And if you did, what did people say to what you had to say?
I mean, I don't really think I ever got a chance to tell my story. To tell you the truth, man, I come from an environment where I didn't have anyone like myself coming around speaking to kids like us. You know, I think we had Scruff McGruff, you know, the little dog that come into school. You know, we had that Smokey the Bear, but we didn't have no one with real life situations coming to talk to us that have changed. So I didn't know anything about change, really. I was just a product of my environment. I didn't know anything. That was the norm for us. You know, that wasn't something that we looked at that was abnormal. You know, we was used to it. We saw it every day. We grew up from birth all the way to I was 14, seeing the same thing constantly with family members, with friends. So it was normal for us. I never had anyone, because if I had someone that just asked me, Kuntrell, what's wrong? What's going on? You know, how can I help you? They would have knew all I wanted was my daddy. You know, I never had a daddy. I never knew him growing up. And when my mama finally showed me and my sister who our daddy was, I think we probably was like 10, 11 years old. I used to see my daddy more often now because I know his car. And I used to wonder, like, why my daddy don't want me? Like, what I ever did to my daddy to make him not want to be in my life. So that used to pain me. And that's a big reason why I started hanging with the group I started hanging with, because they hanging with them took my mind off of him. I mean, it didn't fill the gap of him not being there, but it made me think of him less, think about him less, you know. But no one never came talk to me, asked me what was going on with me, how could they help me, because they would have knew I just want my dad. So I never had that. I never saw it ever growing up.
Well, continue. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that. So you were sentenced literally to life in prison.
Life without parole, yes.
So how did Brian Stevenson, how did that come about? How did they find you?
Yeah, man, I had been locked up maybe 6 years. So I was getting all these letters from this prison human rights watch people, and I'm studied throwing these letters away because these people constantly saying, I want you to tell me your story so I can put it in my book, or so I can say this about it or use it for this. And I used to be like, man, these people ain't talking about nothing. They ain't trying to help me. They don't care nothing about me. They just want to put my story in their book. So I kept throwing their letters away. So one day I'm sitting on my bed and I'm talking to one of my friends inside of prison. And the guard, she come through and pass the mail out. So she give me a letter and I read this from, it say EJI. So I throw the letter on the bed and my friend like, man, who was that? And I'm like, oh, it's just them human rights watch people, man. I'm throwing that mess in the trash. They ain't talking about nothing. And he was like, man, you should read your mail, man. Them folks took time out to write you. And I'm like, I ain't reading that trash. So we started talking again. I was waiting for them to call dinner so we can go to chow. And I was going to throw the letter away then. But as we started talking, by the time they called chow, I forgot to grab the letter. We just got up and left. So we come back from chow maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes later. We started back talking. And for some reason, this letter is bothering my homeboy. He said, man, I think you should read your mail. So I grabbed the letter and I was like, man, if it's bothering you that much, you read it. I throw him the letter. So he opened my mail and he started reading. And the only thing he said to me, he turned the letter around. He said, you almost missed your blessing. So I'm like, what you talking about, man? So I get the letter, and the letter said, hi, my name is Brian Stevenson. I'm with a nonprofit organization called the Equal Justice Initiative. I was doing research on children being sentenced to die in prison, and I ran across your case. He was like, I want to know if I can come visit you. He said, if you're okay with that, write me back as soon as possible. So I thought to myself, like, I've been locked up 6 years. I got life without parole. No one has ever asked me, can they come see me and just see what's going on with me and my situation. So I was like, okay, I'll give him a chance. I wrote him back that night. I sent the letter out that morning. The next week, EJI was out there to see me. That's how I met Brian Stevenson and Equal Justice Initiative.
Wow. All right. Well, I want to come back to a little more of your story, but I want to jump to Nicole here, because part of what's really striking me about what Kuntrell is telling me is just how he had a story to tell, even in, you know, not just his life, but just how everything happened. But because nobody cared, nobody wanted to hear his story, he didn't get to tell his story. But once he was out, once he, you know, got to make contact with Brian, you got to hear his story. So I want to know from you, as an actress, Nicole, when did you first, you know, fall in love with storytelling? When did you know you wanted to be a storyteller? Maybe you want to say anything about the power of story, and then what did hearing Kuntrell's story do to you?
I'm very blessed in that I always knew that I wanted to be an actress. I literally was in kindergarten and was put on stage to play the fire in Rumpelstiltskin. And I got a round of applause from the parents, and I was like, this is it. Also, Casablanca. I saw Casablanca and I went, whatever she's doing, I want to do that. you know, the costumes, the Rick, everything, you know. So I always knew it, and I never doubted it. There was never a plan B for me, and my parents, bless them, they really supported me. So I started acting when I was maybe 9 years old, 10 years old. I started doing TV in Germany, where I was born, and you know, and then went to different countries. So I met Kuntrell actually at the National Museum for Peace and Justice, and it was my first day in Montgomery. I was about to start. I had a costume fitting that day. I think the next day was my first day on the set or something. And I thought, let me go to the museums. I heard about the lynching museum, which is just like, just saying the word just gives me a knot in my stomach. And it is a very powerful experience. I went to the National Memorial. So as I walked through the memorial and you know, was reading about what's going on, of course, I knew the history, but being there where it took place, you know, going to the place where Rosa Parks actually stepped into the bus. And I just wanted to soak it all in, to be in it. After that day that I spent alone at the museum, my heart was really heavy, and I went into the museum just to get a moment of rest. And I saw this door, and it was the cinema. So I just went, let me just sit inside the cinema and cry. You know, I just want to sit down and cry. And as I walked in, I saw that there was a film being shown. And I literally stepped in as it was starting. And it was a short film, about 10 minutes, about Kuntrell. And he tells this story there of how he was incarcerated for life without parole at the age of 14, which I could not even fathom that this could happen. Like, I come from Germany. It's justice is very different there. That could not happen in Germany. So that was shocking to me. And then I hear him talk about acting, and that it was acting that made him dream, and that made him survive and not break in prison, that made him dream, and that made him go on. And I heard it, and I was just sobbing. I went, somebody has to help this boy. Like, he's so great. Like, I could see his potential, and I could see just Kuntrell has this aura about him, this grace, this just a beauty that comes out. And I'm sitting there at the end of the video. This woman says, and we have Kuntrell Jackson here to answer any questions. And I was like, what? So I didn't run up, because there were a few people running up to talk to him. I stepped outside because my head was racing. I was like, there's a reason why I walked into this door. There's a reason why I'm having all these feelings, and I can do something. I'm about to do a movie. I know I'm not the director. I'm not the casting director. I know I'm none of these, but maybe I can invite him to the set, something. So I waited for him outside. He came, I introduced myself. I'm telling him, yeah, we're doing a movie. And he said, yeah, I heard about that. And I said, maybe you can come to the set. Everything is cast because they're already filming, but, you know, let me just take a picture of you. So I took a picture of him, and I kid you not, the picture looks like a headshot, like a professional head. It's so beautiful. So I sent it to the casting director, Eve Pomerantz. She sent it to the local casting director. And I said, you know, who knows, maybe there is like a small part, you know, something, just like let him be in the movement. I didn't know that Kuntrell had already done a movie with Michael B. Jordan, of all people, Just Mercy, playing himself. And I invited him to the set. So he came to the set, and as I was doing, I think just before I started my first scene, I knew Barry was so busy and, you know, so focused on what he was doing. I just said to Barry, you know, I met this really interesting young man. Maybe there is something I want to introduce it to him. So he's like, yeah, okay. And I go, yeah, okay, I did it. And Kuntrell comes to the set. Everybody treats him as if he's already one of the team, you know, like as if he's already an actor. Like I could feel it. Like people were like, oh yeah, hi, you know. And it was just so natural. Eve comes to me and says, there's actually a part that hasn't been cast. So I said, okay, great. So we went to my trailer. We worked with Kuntrell. We taped the audition. I sent it to Barry. Then we didn't hear anything. Like it took maybe 2-3 days or something. And me and Kuntrell, we were texting like crazy. Like, I don't know. He hasn't had time to watch it. He's working, you know. And then finally, I got the notice that Barry asked him to come to the set and audition for him in person, and that he got the part. And the part, I mean, I can't think of anybody who could have played this more authentically, with more emotion, with more like human, the whole human element. Everything was in there. And yeah, it makes me tear up, the whole story. And yeah, and we stayed in contact. I think Kuntrell is just phenomenal, and I think he's going to have great career ahead of him.
All right, now we've been talking about this movie that you're on set for. We're talking about this Barry. So that Barry is Barry Alexander Brown, who is probably best known as an editor. He's edited so many great films, a lot of Spike Lee films, but he's done all kinds of music videos. I mean, his resume, it's ridiculous. But one of the things that stands out is Barry has done all these films for Spike Lee, and Spike Lee, as we know, is a proponent of civil rights and Black Power, and Barry's a white guy. And Barry's a guy
from Alabama.
You're Alabama.
I'm wearing a Yankee hat.
All right, okay. But what's
Kuntrell, you're from Montgomery too, right? Kuntrell? That's where you grew up?
No, I'm from Arkansas.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, all right, South, all right. But my question is, you know, you said how everybody was welcoming on the set. That, to me, that comes back to the director. You said that this guy would actually look at the audition, you know, for, you know, in the midst of already shooting, an actress comes and, hey, my friend. Not every director would, you know, even give her the time of day. So my question to you first, Barry, is just about the power of stories and the kind of stories you want to tell. And you didn't cast Kuntrell because of his story, but you cast him because he would be helping you tell the story you were telling. So tell me just a little bit about your introduction, working with Kuntrell, and maybe knowing this story, what your thoughts are just about how different things can be depending on how we see the world.
Well, really, I mean, I don't actually remember getting the video of the audition. I don't remember. I might have seen it. I don't remember. But I remember that Nicole and Eve were really like, you got to at least meet with this guy, you know? And you know, but I know that Just Mercy had been shooting in Montgomery, and that Kuntrell was in it. And so you know, it was like, okay, sure, set up a meeting, and it was in the production office. And Kuntrell came in, and I think Kuntrell wasn't, I think you weren't feeling comfortable when you first came in, you know. And so we started doing it, and it's a part that the very first time you meet this guy, Leon, he explodes. He explodes, you know, because he's going through nonviolent training, and they push you to the point where you see where hopefully you don't explode, but most people, I guess, when they first go through it, will. And so, and I cannot get Kuntrell to explode. I was saying, oh man, you know, I know the guy's got it in him, you know, and I'm pushing him. Do you remember Kuntrell?
I remember.
I was pushing him. No, I said, come on, man, you gotta, you know, you gotta, you know, I'm gonna be on you right now. And I was really on him. And I said, and at some point, I want you to push me back, man. And the first time, you know, come on, what? You know, I said, you gotta jump up and you gotta push me back. right? And damn it, you got to do it, right? And finally he jumps up and pushes me back. I go, okay, he can do it. You know, but I think he was like, I can't do this to this guy. You know, I'll break him. You know? But finally he did it. You know, I thought, okay, if I can get you to that spot, you know, and you see it in the movie, right, where he explodes, and he explodes. It's like he's holding it in, holding it in. When he explodes, and everybody in the room is like, oh, okay, whoa, Leon, you know, Shamir is a great actor, Shamir Anderson, Leon, you know, but Kuntrell was there, man. He was in the moment, you know, and he's saying, I can't do this, you know, and Shamir is like, cool down, brother, cool down. And you know, the thing about you have to do this take after take. So it's like, sure. You know, but they were there every take, you know, and they really had to have that thing where, you know, you're holding it in, you explode, and then you get pulled back down, you know, to a place where even though, you know, you're feeling like really, I want to kill somebody, you know, and but you know, you got to come down to this place where you actually then have to hear what's being said to you and all that. You know, I think that scene really works.
Absolutely, you know? Absolutely.
And also, I like the scene in the car, you know, and there's a certain amount of improvisation in the car, you know. So.
Well, I wanted to ask you though, just for people who don't know too much about Son of the South, for you to want to direct this film, to put the amount of time in, and we've spoken in the past just about the bravery it took for the people that are portrayed in the film, what they did, the civil rights activists. I want to know what your thoughts are on just the power of knowing this history and how it might change people's perception of the past, of like what it took to just take for granted some of the things we do today.
Well, I think that, I mean, it's really about somebody's transition from being completely on the outside of a movement and deciding to join it, and to join it with as much commitment as possible, you know. And it's not something that anybody wakes up one day and says, oh, this is what I'm going to do. It's steps, and oftentimes, you know, it's crossroads you come to, where you get to that crossroad and it asks you, what kind of person are you? Where do you stand? What do you believe in? What don't you believe in? What are you willing to do? And, you know, for somebody like Bob Zellner, who was a very rare person in Alabama in 1961, each challenge, in my opinion, he met with the right answer, which was, I got to do something. I can't turn a blind eye, because it's easy. It's easy to turn a blind eye. It's easy. Yes,
it is.
You know, and I think for a lot of the people in the civil rights movement, no matter who you were, whether or not you were black or you were white, there's a lot of those young people that joined the movement. You know, like John Lewis, for instance. You know, man, he grew up in Troy, Alabama. He grew up dirt poor. He was off in college. He didn't, you know, he could have said no. I got my life to live, right? I gotta.
Absolutely.
Why should I do this?
Right.
You know?
This doesn't have to affect me.
Doesn't have to, you know. And I don't think so. I don't think, for me, it's not a matter of it's just the case with this white guy, Bob Zellner. I mean, I think that this is the case for almost everybody there. I mean, maybe not completely, but you know.
No, well, that's kind of how I see it. Well, let me bounce to you for a minute here, Kuntrell. In that short movie that Nicole saw, one of the things you say is that, and I'd like to hear everybody's thoughts on this, but you say there are a lot of destructive narratives out there, and they can't be destroyed until they're replaced with new narratives. And I think that's a powerful statement, because I think there are a lot of people, and we read in the papers, that want to ignore history, want to ignore statistics. You know, there are tons of people in jail, but if nobody you know is in jail, you don't have to care about it. There are kids in jail. There's still a lot of kids who are still facing what you faced. They don't have to care about it. But seeing it, understanding it, hearing those stories, understanding that what people thought was how things were or how they got there is not what it is. I just want to know your thoughts on changing those narratives, and maybe how that ties into the work you're doing now.
Yes. It's real, man. You know, for so many years, so many decades, we've been had this hanging over our head that we this or we that, or we don't belong here. We shouldn't be there. You know, we horrible. So it's like once we born, we already got this narrative over us that we're unworthy. You know, we gonna do this when we get older. We not ready to be right here. So it's like it's tough because we see this and we hear this, even though it don't seem like it. You know, a lot of people, like Barry just said, and you agreed to, you know, a lot of people turn away because they don't want to face the realness of what's really going, the reality of what's really going on. So, you know, all our life we've been had this narrative on us that we are terrible people, and just because of our skin, you know, just because of how we look, and that's preposterous to me. It's crazy. So when I get free and I come to, like, I can help so many people with my story, it's like I must take a stand. I must quit thinking about self so I can help change this narrative, especially for people that look like me, you know, because I was locked up for 16 and a half years with some brothers that's in prison. They never gonna come home. It's sad to say they never gonna see the street, and they are great men. When I tell you they great, they awesome. And a lot of them gonna die there. So for me, it's like, I wanna do everything in my power to help change what people think of us. Like, I can't be out here living and representing people that's behind bars for nothing. People that's behind bars that are benevolent people. I can't be out here doing stupidity, letting them down, keeping this narrative about them circulating around this universe. That's not who we, as a people, that's not us. So the work I do it strictly for that reason. You know, we got a lot of kids that's coming up, and they are our future. I don't want you to see these kids and be like they are horrible. They haven't even learned to even have the mind frame to do something bad, but already you got this picture painted of them that they bad. So me, I want to do everything in my power to try to shift that before these kids grow up our future. And you know, you can hurt a child by letting them believe that they are bad people. You know, a child will think that they are bad because you tell them, and you act like they bad people, and they'll do some things that they shouldn't do because in their mind you make them feel like they're a horrible person. So, you know, I do everything in my power to represent them. So, yeah.
Well, you know, all right, I want to bounce to you, Nicole, and then I want to jump to you, Barry. But you know, you mentioned that, you know, you grew up in Germany, and you were shocked to see that, you know, we're putting children away for life. And I feel, you know, one of the things that I love about Son of South, and the fact that there are all these movies being made now about the Black experience here in America, about race in America, is because it does change the narrative. And I think that when you really have a knowledge of your past, especially as a country, it changes you. You know, in Germany, I don't think a bunch of neo-Nazis could storm the Capitol. I just don't think that could actually happen. But it could happen here, and it did happen here. So I'm just curious for you, Nicole, with that slight outsider point of view, seeing America and how we deny our past, and especially in film, because film is probably our greatest tool of propaganda, I think. But I also think it can change things. It's a thing that maybe started it with the birth of a nation, but it's also the thing that can change it. So what are your thoughts on that, on the importance of history, and just what's your viewpoint on how we handle our history here, Nicole?
So I grew up in Germany as a half German, half Iranian girl. So my dad is from Iran. So in Germany, I was sort of the Black person, and when I grew up, there were very few Black people, but those people who I knew, they were professors, they were musicians, they were artists. So for me, I never had that bias that white Americans grow up with in this country, and I also did not understand it when I first came here. So one of my friends, an African American girl who I met in Europe, we met in Switzerland at some retreat. We sort of fell out because she was saying to me, you don't understand the racism here. And I really did not understand it. So it took me a while to really understand the bias and observing how deeply rooted and how systemic the racism is in this country. It was a shock for me. And when I went to Alabama, it became crystal clear. The undertitle of one of the museums said, "From slavery to mass incarceration," and that for me says it all. Like basically, you take a whole nation's freedom, you make them slaves, then you free them. It's not real freedom if you don't give them the means to thrive. And this is still happening. So there is a different kind of slavery that is happening, mainly and most importantly, Black men, young Black men, who then go straight to prison. Basically, like Kuntrell stories. Growing up poor without a father. What's the option? Straight to prison. So what is that other than slavery? If you don't give people the same chances at thriving and creating a life that they can be proud of. So I think there is a lot of work to do in this country. And I even in Germany, I was always called the social Nikki. They called me the social Nikki because I was always concerned about social justice. And for a long time, that was a label that I was a little bit embarrassed about, but I feel injustice so deeply in my body, in my soul, that I always have to do something about it. And luckily, history is catching up. So social justice is finally
starting to catch up.
Everybody is on the bandwagon. It is great. Like history is on our side, and I think things can really change. Things can change now. I feel that there is no more. Well, there's no more denying in the intelligent parts of the country. I'm afraid to say there's unfortunately 50% in this country is still in the hinterlands. I don't know. You are what you're fed. So if you're fed lies, you believe the lies. It's brainwashing.
This is true.
Yeah,
this is true. Well, Barry, let me ask you now. Nicole mentions being on the bandwagon. You've always been, in my opinion, making films that had something to say. I can't think of anything where you haven't done any frivolous work that I've seen. Even back in 1979, The War at Home, which was nominated for an Academy Award, which you co-directed, social issues, civil rights, representation. Why does this stuff matter to you? You could be making any kind of movies you want. Why do you care about making these movies? Why people who do these kind of things? Why not make a Spider-Man movie?
I wouldn't mind making a Spider-Man movie. I really would. I really, really would. No, it's not that. It's just these issues matter to me. I mean, and filmmaking matters to me. And, I think in many ways I've been blessed, to be able to work on so many movies that have something to say and say it well and do it, in a cinematic way. I mean, not every movie, many of them, as you say, do. I mean, one of the things is, Spike and I became friends when we were very young. We've known each other now 40 years, and, I think that some of the things that just pulled us together was that, politically we align, but also our sense of cinema aligns, and that cinema is important to us, and also entertainment is important, and so, I mean, it was just, it's been easy to work together, and he's driven very much by wanting movies that say something, I mean, every once in a while he does do a movie like Inside Man. I mean, Inside Man probably doesn't really have a lot to say. That's true, in a way, when you have somebody like Denzel Washington playing the smart guy, the detective that's going to work it all out, and his sidekick is Chewie. I mean, still, you're kind of saying something, especially going back 14 years.
You are,
you're still kind of saying something, and Spike's very first film, She's Gotta Have It, it's about a young woman who is very sexually active, I mean, but the fact that it was this all black cast, which, at the time was a big deal, big deal. And I remember people saying at the time, and people having the audacity to ask Spike, when are you going to cast a white character in your movie? Do you ever ask a white director that? Do you ever? But, I'm sorry, but there's a certain kind of selfishness in America, and self-centeredness, and
I agree.
A lot of times white people don't see themselves there. It's like, how come you didn't put me in there? Or if you want to level the field in colleges or other places, it's like, well, wait a second, that's not fair. Well, it's not been fair for a very long time. You're right. It ain't been fair. It's not been fair. So now, but you got to level the playing ground because everybody benefits.
Well, I agree.
We're not in separate places. We're not in separate boats. We're in one big boat, and that boat, if it keeps taking in water, eventually you're going to sink. Everybody's going to go down. Except for the people that are rich enough to own the lifeboats.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I've seen that movie too, right? Well, I want to thank you all for being here. I guess my last question for everybody a little bit here is, I feel like the, identity is something, I think America as a country has an identity problem. I think that there's the American dream, which is very different depending on who you are. And then there's this dream of America. We have a song, home of the brave, land of the free. I mean, is probably the antithesis to everything this country was built on. So I just wanted to know your thoughts. And I'll start with you, Kuntrell, then I'd like to hear from Nicole and Barry, just on America's identity and what role do you feel, because you chose, you wanted to be an actor. You said this is what you wanted to do. You wanted to tell stories, basically, or help in telling stories. So what do you feel the role of storytelling will be in changing how America sees itself?
I honestly feel like a storyteller is the most powerful person in the world. If you tell a story, people will listen. They'll watch. So if you tell the right story, you'll get the right message out. So I always believe that the storyteller is the most powerful people on earth. And, I always wanted to be an actor coming way back from New Jack City. Not the drugs, not the killing, not nothing like that. But I told you I was poor growing up. So when I saw how Nino Brown got rich and he was giving out turkeys for Thanksgiving, he used to get the kids money, like that caught my attention when I was little. I'm a little naive little boy, I don't know too much, but I see that he helping the less fortunate. And in my mind, I wanted to be Nino. I wanted to be the one who helped everybody. I just wanted to help. So that's how I wanted to be an actor, how I wanted to act. Watching Nino Brown in New Jack City, I wanted to be Nino Brown minus the drugs, minus the killing, all other crazy stuff. But I wanted to be the one who people can feel like, hey, Kuntrell gonna help us. Don't even worry about it, it's okay. So yeah, but the storytelling, man, telling the story, I understand now that I'm older, these movies, a lot of people, a lot of kids, I'm gonna say kids, even older people, they understand things through film, storytelling.
Absolutely.
So if I'm a part of that, I know in due time, I'll be able to tell a magnificent story where it'll wake somebody up, it'll bring awareness to somebody. That's why I love playing in these type of movies like Just Mercy. They caught the world attention. Son of the South, it's gonna catch the world attention. COVID kind of, threw his little say-so in it a little bit, but it's movies like that that catches people's attention now. And I'm noticing because everybody posting, hey, you seen this on Netflix, you seen this, y'all should watch this. And it's a movie, something like that. For example, When They See Us. You see how they hit? See, I understand that if you tell the right story, it's gonna get the world attention, and then we'll have things like Nicole said. It's on our side now because everybody's starting to wake up, and it's all because of a story being told through film. So yeah, that's my
that's great. I just so you know, I'm friends with Mario Van Peebles, so I'm gonna let him know what you said. He'll love to hear it. So Nicole, what are your thoughts just on the power of story and storytelling? Because you chose this career as well, and you even married another storyteller. So tell me.
Yeah. Well, my whole life has been about storytelling. It's the only thing that always interested me, and from a very, very young age. And I was blessed that I had people who believed that it was worthwhile pursuing that. And I did so in many different countries and in different languages because I was always curious. I do not understand the fear of otherness. I get curious. I want to know what you eat, what music you listen to, what materials do you like wearing, what costumes. Like, I am fascinated by otherness. I do not get afraid. I get interested. So that was kind of the way that I got into it. It also made me feel, telling stories as an actor from a young age made me feel secure. I guess there's a certain amount of anxiety that I have in my body. And I believe it actually comes from, I was a preemie. And so my nervous system was always on alert once I knew my entrance and exit, and I knew my lines, and knew who I'm speaking to and what the scene is about, I felt secure, because it gave me a frame of reference. Like, life is so vast. The story has a structure. It gives you very, very clear boundaries. That's why I love it. Just on a very selfish level, self-preservation. So for me, storytelling was like a life, you know, was a straw. I was holding on to it. As a woman, we need to have more female narratives. We need to tell our own stories, because history is written by men, period. So that is a big, big drive for me. And I was always interested in hearing the story of those who don't have a voice, giving voice to the voiceless. It's always interested me, and is something that I believe in. And when you, as an actor, what I feel in theater more so, because you're directly in contact with the audience, there is a communion happening. It's almost like being in church. Like, for me, being on stage is like being in church. And even in front of the camera, that it's a different medium, and it's almost a different profession, I would say. You need different skills for both. And very few people can do both. And it is the most powerful tool for a change. Like, when we get together and we talk to our friends, what do we say? What did you see? Have you seen this? You know, like, these are the things that make the world go round. Yeah, so I hope I can do that until the day I die. I would be a happy person.
Well, I can see why they cast you as Fire in that first play. Okay. Well, Barry, I have to ask you, because, you know, you've been in Barry's church. So, Pastor Barry, you as a storyteller, and you've been telling stories for many, many years as an editor. I happen to think editors are kind of master storytellers, because I feel a film is actually directed 3 times. First time when the script's written, second time on the sketch, and the third time in the editing room, you literally can create a whole new movie. So what are your thoughts on the power of storytelling and why you do it?
Well, I mean, I'm not so sure I'm so clear about why I do it. You know, I wish I had such a solid thing. You know, I'm listening to how powerful storytelling is and how important it is, you know, and I mean, I hope all that is really, really true. You know, but you know, it's what I'm drawn to do. You know, I grew up in the South, and it's a tradition of storytelling, you know, in the South, and I think I grew up with that and liked it, and also I was very much drawn to novels, and you know, and then from novels into movies. So I mean, yeah, I like storytelling, and I like a good story, you know. And you know, Nicole said something about telling your own stories. One of the few places I've ever taught, because I'm not really a very good teacher, you know, but I've gone to Uganda to teach at Maisha Mira Nair School, and they have a slogan there for East African filmmakers. If we won't tell our stories, who will? You know, and I very much believe in that, you know, and I think that you know, filmmaking, and I'm glad that filmmaking is becoming more accessible to more people, because more great talent will rise out of all over the world, you know, and you know, in a place like East Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda. I mean, there are stories to be told there that nobody else can tell but them. You know, I wouldn't presume to go in and say, well, I'm going to tell your story, because, you know, I would get like a basic thing.
Right.
Hey, I wouldn't get the thing that's interesting, you know? And you know, and one of the reasons I made Son of the South was because that was a story I could tell. You know, I could tell the story of a white guy from Alabama who had to change. Because I mean, if you grow up white in Alabama, there's a point where you've got to question things, especially at the time that you know. I mean, I grew up in at least part of my youth was in the Old South, you know, the South that's depicted in that movie, and I know that place, and I could tell that story, and bring you into it and make it real, and make it meaningful, and hopefully do something that will also inspire you, no matter where you're from, you know, and that's what I want people to leave the theater with. Is I wanted people to be inspired to do something, you know.
Wow, great film.
Can I say something?
Oh, sure,
Mike?
please.
Like I just want to say, Barry, I think this is exactly what you managed to do with the movie. It's a movie that is easy to watch because it also has some humorous moments. Those, you know, Southern humorous moments.
The South is a funny place.
But
you know?
I left, I mean, and I hope many people will, I left when I first saw it for the first time with a sense of hope, with a sense of wanting to do something. It wasn't like, whoa, it was terrible what happened. It was like, whoa, there's a movement, you know, that started then, and for a long time nothing happened, and now it's happening. So I think you brilliantly did exactly what you were hoping and to set out with the movie.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I referred to the scene. One of my favorite scenes is the scene that Kuntrell's in. They're in a car, right? and they got Bob Zellner underneath this blanket because, hey, man, they're driving from Alabama into Mississippi. They cannot have a white cop see this white boy in a car, you know, in this car, you know, and he's, you know, and they're taking the chance to really to poke fun at him, to laugh, and actually, you know, Lucas plays it beautifully because he sees nothing funny in this at all. And as a matter of fact, if you could see the whole takes of this, it was actually funnier than what it ends up in the film, because you know it's really like this slow burn.
You gotta put it on a DVD.
And everybody else is kind of enjoying themselves, you know. And there was one little ad lib there, you know. You got to watch this one for sure, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember that line.
Yeah, but it's not a line I wrote. Line, you know, they just got it because it's happening, you know.
Well, I thank you all for being here. I appreciate the work that you're doing. You, Kuntrell, with you know, all the justice work that you're doing. You, Nicole, of course, you know, radiating the screen with your fire, and you, Barry, as a filmmaker. Thank you for doing this, and I hope I can have any or all of you back again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having us.